محمدًا عبده ورسوله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن يتق الله يجعل له مخرجا ويرزقه من حيث لا يحتسب ومن يتوكل على الله فهو حسبه إن الله بالغ أمره قد جعل الله لكل شيء قدرا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ومن يتق الله يجعل له مخرجا. Whoever is mindful, conscious, aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يجعل له مخرجا. Allah will grant him a way out. Allah will grant him a way out. And Allah says, وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. Allah will provide for him or her from places that he or she does not even expect, does not even understand. That when all the doors, all the windows seem closed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can open new doors when we come back to the awareness and consciousness and awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My dear brothers, Allah, La ilaha illallah, we bear witness that there is no one worthy of worship but Allah, our sustainer, our creator, our sustainer, our cherisher, my sisters, mothers, scholars, elders in the gathering. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with another Jummah, another day. And asbaha bi ni'matin faminka wahdak la sharika lak. We express our thanks and gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La ilaha illallah, when we bear witness that there is no one worthy of worship but Allah, our sustainer, our creator, our cherisher, the nourisher, the one who sent us in this world for a short and appointed time. And after that time is up, we'll all be returning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does that mean to be conscious and aware of Allah? What does it mean to have taqwa? What does it mean to come back to awareness? And this question that we have to ask ourselves is that how do we learn to come back to the consciousness and awareness when we are distracted, when we are living our life on autopilot? What happens when you're driving somewhere and you think you're going the right way but you're actually wrong and you don't know and you think you're going the right way? What would it take for you to get out of that path or get out of that direction and make it, take the exit, make a U-turn and come back? What would it take? What would it take for you to come back to the right direction, to the right path? That if you're distracted, if you're not aware, or to be worse, that if you are not aware and you think that you are aware and you're going the wrong way, how do you get out? How do you course correct? And this is where, Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, and other scholars have talked about this importance of coming back to the awareness and consciousness, coming back to the awareness and consciousness of Allah, and even before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, awareness of yourself. That you cannot be a mindful person, you cannot be a mindful Muslim unless you are aware of who you are and where you're going, what you're doing. How does your action, behavior, and attitude impact yourself or your family or the people around you, your work, your home, the way that you work, you live, you lead? So it's so important that we learn to turn off that autopilot and we come back to awareness. And once this person who's missed the exit, going the wrong way, understands, notices that, hey, I'm actually distracted. Hey, let me question myself and take muhasabah, take account of myself. Let's reflect, let's contemplate, let's come back to awareness and see where am I going. To accept that I made a mistake or I'm going the wrong direction. I should get out, I should make a U-turn, I should return, I should come back. And that coming back is so beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That coming back is so beloved to Allah. That this son, this daughter, thinks that they know, they figured it out. It's their parents, they made all these mistakes. And they don't forgive their parents, they cut off their relationship, they stop talking to their siblings, they stop talking to their relatives, they break off ties of kinship. And after 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, they hold on all of these difficulties, hold on all of these trauma, hold on to all of these issues and challenges. They never cleanse themselves from these things. Recently I met somebody that had this, relationship issue with a close relative, someone that's very close in the same, in the family. And they never forgave this person. They never, mended the relationship. They held on to whatever, the other person did. And they held on to it for years after years after years until it started showing up mentally, until it started showing up physically, until it physically made them sick. And there was no other way, no other root cause of where is this sickness coming from, what this sickness even means, except that this person have chosen to live with all that hate, live with all of that, difficulties in their mind. And this son, this daughter who has lost their way, finally finds their way and realizes, you know what? I need to mend my relationship. It's not about what other people do, it's about my reaction. Life is 10% what happens and 90% how I respond to it. They pick up the phone and they say, Mom, Dad, I made a mistake. I didn't understand. I didn't realize. I messed up and I'm coming back. And even if this person, if this son, this daughter is 1,000 miles away, and when they picked up that phone, when they called their parent, how'd that parent feel? What do those parents do? That even if they haven't taken a step back, once their heart is returning to the right direction, this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's doors open up. That the Prophet say that Allah loves this so much, and he gave us an analogy. It's like that person who is traveling on that camel and he has lost his way. He goes to sleep, he gets up and he lost his camel, and he looks around, and all his belongings, his water, his food, everything that he needs for his life in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere, is on that camel, and the camel is lost. And he looks to the right and looks to the left. He looks to the north and looks to the south, and he runs all around and he can't find the camel. And he realizes that after some time that all the hope that I have in this place for living and everything that I have, for living is on that camel. It's gone. And he gives up all hope. And he sits. And he's ready. He's waiting. Now he's waiting to die. Waiting to just, for the time to pass. Until a time comes where his gaze falls upon the horizon and he sees that camel coming back to him. And he jumps up with joy and he says, Allah, you are my slave and I'm your Lord. You are my slave and I'm your Lord. He doesn't know what he's saying out of joy. He's so happy. He's so excited that he has gotten that hope back for life. The Prophet says, that person, the way that he is happy to get his life back, to get all of that back, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is even happier with you when you return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How are we returning our hearts? How often are we returning our hearts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And are we living our life on awareness, that consciousness, that connection, that cleansing we need, our hearts, our mind, our soul? The Prophet said, about that person I was mentioning earlier that chose to hold on to all the difficulties in life. I've given a khutbah here earlier, I think a few months ago, on the importance of learning, understanding our guilt, our self-doubt, our fears, our anger. And one of the things that I mentioned is that it's a very lazy way to live. If someone does something to you and all your life, all your problem, you just blame it onto that one person and you choose to live like that. It's a lazy way to live because you haven't done any work on yourself. And this is the himmah that the Prophet ﷺ has taught us, the courage, the hilm, the forbearance, the sabr, the rahmah. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that how to let go, how to forgive, how to cleanse, how to turn, not just heal yourself, but be a source of healing for people and turn them around. And this happens when you're able to cleanse our heart. When our heart is clean and when we are continuously coming back to Allah, continuously cleansing our heart. That the Prophet ﷺ says, this person that enters through this door, he is from Jannah, and we know this hadith. But have you ever thought about what this hadith is doing? That the Sahaba stays with this person to figure out what type of action or deed does this person have that is different than ours. And after 3 days realizes that everything he does, all the salah, everything he does, we do. There's nothing special. And he says, I actually stayed to observe and I couldn't find anything. But what is that very special thing? And he said, no, I don't really have it. And when he was about to leave, then he called him back and said, hey, I have one thing. What is that? That every night before I go to sleep, I cleanse my heart from any hatred, any jealousy, anything wrong, any bad feelings from my heart. I forgive everyone. And this person goes to sleep by cleansing his heart and his soul and his body from all of these difficulties you carry around. All of these distractions that you carry around, all these validation that we're looking for. How do we let go of all of these validations and all these expectations? That La ilaha illallah, no one can provide but Allah. La ilaha illallah, no one can harm but Allah. La ilaha illallah, no one can benefit but Allah. La ilaha illallah, no one can give but Allah. La ilaha illallah, no one can take by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we come back to this La ilaha illallah is the phrase of spiritual focus. It is the phrase of focus that Allah, the first thing Allah did is He asked us to let go of distraction and come back to focus. That your first thing, as you're saying La ilaha illallah, all your life you messed up. And the first thing you do is you negate all those things, all those distractions. You say, La ilah. None of this is my ilah. None of these people. None of these conditions. None of these situations. None of these materials. None of these resources. None of these things that I keep expecting. Nothing. La ilah and illallah except Allah. And you come back to that focus. You focus your heart on Allah. And that's when you start to let go. That's when you start to build yourself up. When you focus on the right thing. You stay focused on the wrong thing, you're going to be losing your potential. You stay focused on the creation, you're going to be losing your potential. You stay focused on Allah, you stay focused on your purpose, you stay focused on your goal, then you can continue to increase towards your higher potential. That when you are under the influence of the nafsul ammara bisu, your lower self, and it takes you away from Allah, takes you away from your best self, you're under the influence of the shaitan and the ego and the hawa and the dunya, the four enemies. When you're distracted by the lower self, coming back to Allah with La ilaha illallah. The Prophet said, renew iman. Your iman gets old like your clothes get old, and renew your iman. And the Prophet Sahaba asked how, and the Prophet said, that keep renewing iman with La ilaha illallah. How? What does that mean? Is it just a phrase that you say? Is it just a movement of the tongue? The La ilaha illallah that you say? Or is it that movement of the heart, the movement of your life, the movement of your actions, the movement of your attitude and character and behavior that distracts that disconnects from everything else, lets go of all distraction and focuses only on Allah? That's what we have to understand. Who Allah is, how to connect with Allah. And that focus, my brothers, will make us the best Muslims. Daniel Gilbert and Matthew Killingsworth, these two psychologists at Harvard, did a study. And they put a gadget on people, about 2,000 plus people, and they monitored their focus. And they found that about half the time while they were at work, their body was one place and their minds are wandering. Their minds are not focused. 50% of our awake, present life, we are not in the moment. We're somewhere else. We're not focused. But when you say La ilaha illallah, you come back to your focus. You come back to your intentions. That innamal amalu binniyah, because every moment you have an ability to do an action that pleases Allah and brings you close to Allah, if you're aware, if you're conscious, if you let go of distraction. As soon as you say Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum, you reach for your phone. That means your brain is on distraction. Somebody's talking to you, you're scrolling through the phone. Listening to a lecture, scrolling through a phone. Everybody, all the youth, all the kiddos that are sitting in the back, it's not fully your fault. You live in a generation where they're spending billions of dollars on programs and apps and gadgets that will keep your mind distracted. Yes, focused in other things, but it's continuously moving frame. So, how do we get our hearts back to that awareness, our presence, that we reach for our phone about 150 times a day? How do we keep our phone away when we're focused in our work? How do we focus on reading and writing, dhikr, remembrance, and intention, at least starting everything with an intention? You know that the Buddhist monks, they're training their minds to be focused for years and years and years. But what about the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba? that the Sahaba, their focus in their salah was so beautiful. Their body is to be so calm and still, and their mind is to be so focused in their salah, that the salah used to open up to them. And we hear stories after stories after stories where the Sahaba, they're describing as if they're moving through Jannah as they're praying, as if they can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as they're praying. And to the point that birds used to come sit on their back as they used to make ruku, because they used to be like a statue, still no movement. Jabir mentions the Prophet sat in silence in that sense of tafakkur and reflection for long periods of time. They were focused and aware and connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But all I'm asking you guys is this one thing, is that how can I get back, how can I not live my life on distraction? And before I do everything every day, come back to La ilaha illallah. Let go of distraction. Come back to focus. Make your intention. Make your intention. Because every action will turn into worship for you when you have these moments of intention, reflection. People ask, what do Muslims do? You know, all these people, they have meditation is a big thing now. That people are doing meditation, they're building their best mind, their focus, their flow. Allah has programmed micro moments of meditation in our day or throughout the day. That before every single action we have to meditate and reflect and contemplate, come back to Allah and make intention. And these intentions are gifts. They'll open up the barakah, open up connection with Allah. These intentions are ways to connect our heart with Allah and let go of all distractions, so we turn everything we do, even going home, even having a conversation with our kids, even playing with our kids, serving our spouses and taking care of things at home, everything will turn into worship because your heart is not connected to the people. You're not doing it for them, you're doing it for the sake of Allah, you're doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't ask any return and reward from any human beings, but your return and reward is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do we turn off as Muslims our autopilot, our distraction? Come back to awareness. Build. Go from that nafsul ammara bisu, the lower self, to our higher self. When you're starting to connect, and now we're under the influence of Allah and the angels, the Prophet ﷺ and the Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq to continue to come back to that presence of Allah. Continue to let go of distraction and return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Continue to cultivate our heart to be in that state of reflection, state of connection. And all of the distractions we have today, our phones, all the digital distractions, all the distractions we have, reducing those distractions to the minimum. Making a plan, making a strategy to reduce those distractions. Having time when you have no connection to those distractions. Having time when you are only with Allah and there is nothing else, no other technology in that room. Having time when you're in the nature and you have no other technology in the room. Having time when you are just in the dinner table with your family, you have no other distraction in the room. And you build focus, you build purpose, you build intention, you build your best self. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all of the tawfiq. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu, nasta'inu, nastaghfir. Brothers, can we all just move forward? There are brothers standing in the back. Just move forward a little bit. Just there, I see gaps here in the front. Can you fill the gaps? Move forward, please. قال الله تعالى بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet ﷺ. And how do we connect our heart with the Prophet ﷺ? The final message here, that every Jummah we're supposed to increase our salawat. Jummahs are renewals of the heart. Jummahs are the renewals of the heart. Jummahs are special days when you especially need to disconnect with your phones, especially need to disconnect with your distractions and do your surah kahf, do your du'as, connect with Allah. There are times throughout the day Allah is accepting your dua. Some people, there are different narrations, different opinions from the scholars, right at the sunrise, before Jummah. in between the two khutbahs, after Jummah, after us, between Asr and Maghrib. There are times of acceptance, ijabah, that Allah, when you raise your hand, you ask Allah for anything, Allah will grant it to you. Allah is waiting for you on Jummah, but where is our heart? Are we coming back to Allah? And on this day, we have to renew our connection with the Prophet ﷺ as well. That's why our ulama, they mentioned to send more salawat to the Prophet ﷺ on the day of Jummah. Every day, but especially on the day of Jummah. As we're saying, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, asking your heart, looking into heart and saying, how much do I love the Prophet? How much do I yearn to be in the company of the Prophet? How would it feel when the Prophet is smiling at me and I'm visiting the Prophet ﷺ? Finally, I'm able to see him on the day of judgment. Finally, I'm able to be his neighbor. How would it feel to visit the Prophet ﷺ? Also visualizing your visits to Medina, if that helps. Whatever helps to connect you with the love of the Prophet ﷺ. And how can I cultivate a prophetic heart? What did the Prophet ﷺ do? How can my heart be like the heart of the Prophet ﷺ? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad kama sallayta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. اللهم يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك نستغيث أصلح لنا شأننا كله ولا تكلنا إلى أنفسنا طرفة عين يا حي يا قيوم يا حي يا قيوم نسألك حبك حب من يحبك والعمل الذي يبلغنا يقربنا حبك يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك يا مصرف القلوب صرف قلوبنا على طاعتك يا منور قلوبنا بقلوبنا على الدين معرفتك اللهم نسألك خير ما سألك منه نبيك حبيبك محمد مصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم نعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذ منه نبيك حبيبك محمد مصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم أنت المستعان وعليك البلاغ لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Connecting our empathy and our compassion of the Prophet ﷺ and prophetic empathy and compassion for our brothers and sisters in Gaza, in Palestine, all the places in Sudan, all the places that are weak, that are vulnerable, holding their pain with that rahmah, that compassion, raising our hands, shedding our tears, asking, making du'as to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, giving our sadaqahs, raising our voices, taking the actions that we were able to take, but making our du'as and not forgetting them and keeping them in our du'as. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala naj'aluka fi nuhurihim na'udhu bika min shururihim. We ask Allah, we take Allah as our shield, as our refuge, as our shelter. May Allah hold their hearts in rahmah and compassion. May Allah grant tranquility like Allah granted peace and tranquility to Ibrahim alayhi salam. In the middle of the fire, when apparently there's this environment of fire, but inside it was a beautiful, cool, beautiful breeze and beautiful place that Ibrahim was in the middle of the fire. May Allah protect them, may Allah bless them, may Allah accept their sacrifice as a means for the guidance of the ummah and the turnaround of the humanity. May Allah guide us and our nation, our country and humanity to the right direction. Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum, Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum, Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Aqimis Salam.